I can do myself. Good morning again. We're back live in House Transportation. There was, my apologies for some scheduling issue with some unexpected absence of presenters. So the commissioner has worked with his team to bring in pinch hitter and queue up some conversations around commercial driver's license testing education pieces so that we can be ready for some of our future testimony. So today's morning schedule that was originally on your agenda had to be adapted, adjusted, and the commissioner worked with his team. So we are now going to kind of pivot a little bit and already pick up a little bit where we were as far as commercial piece. So if you would like to, I appreciate you coming over so quickly. If you would like to introduce yourself for the record, and between you and the commissioner, we'll pick up and keep moving forward.
Okay. So my name's Patrick McManaman, MCM, ANA, MON. A little bit about myself. My background is in law enforcement. I started with the Burlington Fire Department back in 1980, was an EMT defibrillator for them until 1986, when I went to the police department, which I was the first one and only one to ever do that. They had police officers go to the fire department, never the other way. I caught a lot of grief about it, but I spent 14 years with the Burlington Police Department. I retired from there in 2000. I was the first school resource officer at the high school in Burlington, and I developed the Citizens Police Academy at the police department. I also taught at the academy. I, in fact, taught the commissioner while he was just going through the academy. That's how old I am. Or young, yes. In 2000, Director Button came to me, who was a commander at the time when I was in Burlington, was a commander in Burlington, and then he became director of DMV enforcement, came over to me one day and said, "What do you think about weighing trucks?" This was a couple months after he started his job. And I said, "Well, I never gave it a thought." So he goes, "Well, why don't you give it a thought? We're putting on new positions. The legislature gave us the funding to put on the positions. And I think you'd be a good fit." So I had my 20 years with Burlington. So I took my retirement and came over as a commercial vehicle inspector. And then my last 4 years, I was a lieutenant for the commercial vehicle enforcement unit. I supervised the northern team. So if you drew a straight line across here, the 9 inspectors that were north of that, I supervised. Then I turned 55, and as you all know, 55 state law enforcement well, it's now 57, but 55 back then, you had to get done. So I had to get done. Director Button then came to me and said, "We have an opening in our education unit to oversee school buses." So I said, "Okay." And he said, "You have a background in commercial vehicles. School buses fall under that. What do you think?" And I said, "Well, I'm not old enough to retire yet. I have," at the time, she was 6 years old, 5 years old. Plus I had a 20-year-old and a 19-year-old. And putting them through college, and then the younger one, I needed the money. So I stayed on. That was in 2013. I've been with the education units ever since. About 4 years ago, I was given the supervisor's job with the education unit. So a little bit about the education. I know I'm going to come over and talk about the whole unit later, but we oversee school buses, the motorcycle training, driver's license, or the CDL schools, and the private driver's ed schools. So we don't oversee the ones that are located in school districts. We oversee the private companies and license those instructors. We also do a variety of other minor stuff. We do the employee background checks for the department. And some of our people in our unit also assist with CDL testing and driver's testing when the Nancy's unit needs help. So that's basically our unit. And again, I'll be coming over to talk about that later at another time, and then we can go through this very specifics of what the unit has and what we offer. I know there were questions about House 284 specifically, and just briefly to go over some of it. That would require anybody over the age of 70 to come in and upon renewal and get their eyes examined. But I also heard the main thing, thrust of it was with the RVs in the section, which would require anybody that purchases an RV over 10,001 pounds have specialized training in operating that RV. And then if it reaches the threshold of a CDL requirement, so combination vehicle, or it could be a straight vehicle, gross vehicle weight rating of 26,001 pounds or more, or a combination vehicle that combination meets 26,001 pounds and the trailer meets a 10,001 pound gross vehicle weight rating, a CDL would be required. And they would have to have specialized training in the RVs. If you want me, I can go over briefly what I found out about that. If you're interested in that, or if you have specific questions, please feel free to ask me. I don't know how you want me to proceed with that.
Well, I appreciate that you're here. I know that there is an opportunity that we didn't necessarily anticipate, so we're going to throw you into that a little bit. The vision piece may or may not have to tie directly to RVs, but overall, the issue of vision and testing at certain ages is required for anybody with a CDL, right? There is, you have to.
Yes.
So there's always been a question about whether or not regular driver's license should or shouldn't have vision retests at some point. And then I guess not necessarily the same issue, but then we now have these monster, well, it's not the right word, huge RVs that are as big as, I guess you would say, many, commercial trucks. They don't require any additional training or any additional certification. And if we were to go down that path, I guess it would come to your area, I guess, to try to monitor. How would you go about something like that? What would it look like? Or just a general opinion of, not that we're ready to say that the department is ready to give their full position on this, but what would something like that, how does it fit into your process?
Okay.
Maybe part of what you're going to talk about more.
Okay.
So I don't know if you can make any comments.
Okay. I can go through what the process would be. First, I forgot, I want to apologize for my dress. Our office is being redone. My specific office has finished, so I was planning on today putting stuff back the way it was. I taken my dress clothes back home so they didn't get filthy. And I wasn't expecting to come over today. So please excuse my dress. So if a person if we were the pass H-284, if you were the pass H-284 and it was signed into legislation, what it would require the person to do is if the vehicle has a gross vehicle weight rating of over 10,001 pounds and also below 26,001 pounds, it would require them to go through specialized training and have an endorsement put on their license. Right now, we don't require them to go through any training whatsoever. I can relate this to the smaller school buses, the non-CDL school buses. Is about the size that we're talking about. It may be a little longer because, of course, when they do the gross vehicle weight rating, they're taking in account the weight of what you're carrying. So, of course, the school bus is going to have a little bit more weight to it. But it's about roughly the same size of a smaller school bus, a non-CDL school bus. Right now, there is no training available, so the training would have to be developed. Then we'd have to look at if it's in-house. We have nobody that is trained in operating an RV. We also, if you're doing it outside, then we have to have schools that are available, willing to do it. So that's one of the things that would have to be worked through, how that's going to look. Then, yes.
Would somebody, Jim Casey Hubbard, would somebody who say move ahead, say this went through, and other states don't necessarily do that during that wait, they can come in here, right? And there's nothing to stop them. So this bill would actually be nothing more than a penalty to the residents of Vermont that want to go on vacation. Look, because if I'm sitting there, say I get a camper, maybe not that big of a camper, but does it take that big of a one when you combine it with your vehicle's weight? I mean, it's not much to go over 10,000 pounds.
It's not. So talk about the penalty, if they enter Vermont and they're from another state, we have a reciprocal agreement, we're going to accept their license. So there would be no penalty for that. And the only place that a person from Vermont that doesn't have that endorsement, if it's required, the only place they're going to get a penalty is in Vermont because they can travel to other states with no issues. And that, so even though, and the research I've done is other states, some states, and I believe it's 9, I'd have to look at the bill review. But I believe it's 9 states right now require specialized training for RV operators, but it's for the 26,001 pounds and more CDL vehicles, not the lower vehicles. And that's so, there is no state that requires it for the smaller vehicles. And again, the penalty for that, if they were to come in, there wouldn't be a penalty because we accept the reciprocal agreement, we accept their license and their endorsement. On the other hand, the only place that a Vermonter would get a penalty would be in Vermont. They wouldn't get it outside.
9 states do currently require additional training. Is that
Yes.
mean an additional, that training is provided by that state or by these other schools that you mentioned? Is it somehow noted on their license that they've had this training? How does that, is it another additional endorsement? Is it another checkbox on the license? How does that work?
Actually, no, it's a CDL and it doesn't have any specialized endorsement in it.
But it is another level of license.
It's a commercial driver's license, so they would have to go through the whole process. Do you want me to talk about the process now?
If you're gonna come back and please we go through the whole thing, but I would definitely want to make sure that the questions are asked so that you are able to talk to it when we come back. We can kind of feel our way through it there a little bit. Representative Burke, go ahead. And then
I
we
just
have-
want to note that my constituent did some research on this and it looks like there are 17
Okay,
states that require special licenses for some RVs.
okay.
What weight?
I don't
It's,
have that right now. I'm just looking at what research he did. Just said RVs pose specific challenges regardless.
so the research I have done is, and I'm sorry, I got the number wrong, because I don't have the bill review in front of me. But you are correct. It does require the specialized license and it is a CDL. There is no special endorsement to it. So if it's a type B CDL or 26,001 pounds single vehicle, then they would require a type B CDL. If it's 26,001 pounds combined with the trailer being 10,001 pounds or more, then it would require a class A. And depending on the connection, it could be a pinto hook, it could be or it could be a regular tractor trailer. It all depends on how the combination is put together. Typically, it's a pinto hook or fifth wheel. You wouldn't get a regular CDL.
You're still up there, Representative Burke? You're still happy?
Yeah, I don't know if you want to keep going down this path or not, but one issue that somebody brought up to me is, what about somebody said they rented RVs, to go camping or something like that? How would you deal with something like that? So I think that's an issue that's hanging out there as a problem.
And that is going to be an issue because we do have companies that do rent their RVs. It would basically probably limit their ability. So like I have a CDL, so I'd be able to go in and rent one, but somebody that doesn't have a CDL, if it's a CDL sized vehicle, wouldn't be able to go in and rent one.
Representative or Pouch is next and then.
Yeah, thanks for helping us with this. So I did a quick search to see what's going on. And some states, if it's over 26,000 pounds, CDL and other things, some have some lengths that it appears that could trigger this. At least one state has their own special endorsement that, for the state. And then a whole bunch of states don't require anything. So 26,000 pounds is a lot. I have a little one that's 1,500 pounds. So if I had an RV, one I drive, that's over 26,000 pounds, which I guess is possible, could be like a big bus. I would not require a CDL in Vermont.
Not right now, no.
Yeah, that's all right.
Okay, so,
Over 26,000 pounds you do.
Let me clarify that. If I am a private citizen, okay, and I go into, I'm gonna say Pete's RV because that's in Burlington, I know Burlington. So
$500,000 in
I go into
your.
Pete's RV and I buy a straight vehicle that has a gross vehicle weight rating of 26,000 pounds. I'm not required to have anything but a regular license, okay? If I get one that's 26,500 pounds, as a private citizen, I'm not required to get anything. However, if a person from the company drives that vehicle to my campsite, they're required to have a Class B CDL because they're in commerce. I'm not in commerce. That's the difference. If I go in and I take my dually pickup truck, which is going to have a gross vehicle weight rating of at least 12,000, if not closer to 14 to 16,000, okay? And I go in and buy a trailer, let's say that we'll go to the low end. My dually pickup is 12,000 pounds, gross vehicle weight rating. I go in and I buy a trailer that has a gross vehicle weight rating of 14,001 pounds. As a private citizen, I'm not required to have anything. If I deliver that trailer as a representative of Pete's RV, I'm required to have a Class A CDL because I'm in a commercial enterprise. As a private citizen, I'm not a commercial enterprise, and we are commercial. If you're not a commercial enterprise, you're exempt from the CDL requirements. So that's where the big thing comes in, is that, yes, that person that works for Pete's RV is going to need those licensing because they are doing it commercially. But non-commercial, I'm not required.
So in Vermont, if I wanted to have a straight RV that was 30,000 pounds, I guess what I'm getting at, where's the weight? Is there a weight difference, or is there sky's the limit? Can I drive something
The way
100 feet long and as long as it's straight?
So the way the CDLs work is you have the Class A, Class B, Class C, okay? Or CDL classifications, and then Class D, of course, is a regular driver's license. So Class A is a combination vehicle where the combination, the gross vehicle weight rating, the combination, so you take the what we call the horse or the power unit gross vehicle weight rating, and you take the trailer gross vehicle weight rating, add the two. If they are over 26,001 pounds, you now look at the trailer. What's the gross vehicle weight rating of the trailer? Is it over 10,001 pounds, or is it under 10,001 pounds? If it's under, you're not required to have anything. If it's over, then you're required to have a Class A CDL.
In a commercial environment.
In a commercial environment, yes. Okay. Class B is a straight vehicle. It can have a trailer, and I'll talk about that in a second, but a Class A or Class B is a straight vehicle. Okay, it's the power unit. You look at the weight of that. Is that 26,001 pounds or more? Okay, if it's not 26,001 pounds or more, then you're not required to have anything. If it's over the 26,001 pounds, then in a commercial enterprise, you're required to have a CDL. There is one caveat to that. And this is where our some of our churches get into problems because they get a large bus, maybe a school bus that they convert to, or they get what we call a multifunction school activity bus, which looks like a school bus, but it's a different color. And I'll get into that when I come back over. But they would be required, if it has the passenger capacity of 16 or more, including the driver, or the gross vehicle weight rating is 26,001 pounds, they are required to have a CDL with a passenger endorsement, even though they're not a commercial enterprise. That's the way our law is written. Okay. So to get back to the straight vehicle, let's say I add a trailer to that straight vehicle, okay? But the trailer is 10,000 pounds or less gross vehicle weight rating. Then all I need is a Class B. If it's 10,001 pounds or more, I jump into the Class A.
all under a commercial.
All under commercial.
Or private.
Correct,
Private, not.
You don't-
Private right now is not.
Private on any of these things.
correct.
Okay.
So, it's only commercial. A lot of things that when I was on the road, a lot of things we had, and you've seen them, the landscaping companies that have the dually pickups, and then they have the equipment truck. A lot of them didn't realize that they needed Class A CDLs. And they would come into our rest area or our stops, our truck stops, and we'd find, you need a Class A for this. And that, so, a lot of them didn't realize that. That I think has reduced a lot since, because again, we're talking over 15 years ago that we were doing that. So I think a lot of them have come into play with it. Or become knowledgeable of it. But yeah, it's, so let's say that I have I'll give you an example. I moved my daughter and son-in-law and grandkids to Texas during COVID. My daughter got a job down there. I drove the Penske truck. Now I drove fire trucks, so I wasn't worried about driving it. And I also have my CDL. But the gross vehicle weight rating of that Penske truck was 26,000 pounds. Okay. Penske and U-Haul do that specifically so they don't require a CDL. What they do is they adjust it a little bit, the suspension in it and tires on it. And that's so it takes the gross vehicle weight rating below that 26,001 threshold. Okay. I wasn't required to have anything except for a regular driver's license to drive from here to Texas. And that through all the states that I went through. Now, if this was to pass, I can still drive that Penske truck down there, but the same size RV, I wouldn't be able to. Well, I would once I got out of the state of Vermont, but between here and Vermont, the border, I wouldn't.
If I go and personally buy, I mean, the biggest thing at Beats RV, the biggest thing that's there, no matter how big it is, it's my personal use. At this point, it's the size of the old Vermont Transit bus that's sitting there. I use it for my own personal, no matter how many people I put on it. I don't need any additional tests, training, anything. I can drive it out of there no matter how many curbs I bounce over.
That's
right. But I can get that size vehicle for my personal use and do whatever I want with it as long as it's not commercial and I don't need any additional training.
Okay, so if you go to Pete's RV and buy it, if you bought, like some people will buy buses and with the intention of converting it into a camper. We have specific requirements to do that. So if you don't meet those requirements, then we go by the passenger rating and the gross vehicle weight rating of the vehicle. And it may require, because you fall under that passenger carrying exemption that we have or addition that we have for the CDL in our state.
If I do buy an old bus and I want to convert it, I have to make sure that
You meet all the
there are
requirements.
some rules about that.
Yes, there are.
Because it's an actual bus, but if it was an RV or I bought it from, okay, interesting.
Yeah, just point, it looks like the largest RVs can be 30,000 pounds. But that doesn't stop you from towing your car behind it too,
Correct.
which you do see, on the highway. I mean, I'm not sure about this bill and the limits that are potential, being discussed. But it does give me pause to think somebody could be driving a 30,000 pound, RV towing something and not have had any training or demonstration of a capability behind it. I would be curious to find, some data on accidents. Is it a problem or not? I don't know.
I'd have to look at the way we report crashes in our data. I do not believe we break down RVs. It's similar to school buses. You won't go in and be able to find how many school buses have been involved in a crash because we don't break that down. So I don't know if there's data. Well, there's definitely not data for Vermont. I'd have to do research to find out if there's data of other places.
Representative Burke?
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely a safety issue. You would think that maybe the highway safety group could look at that. That would be helpful to know if this is a problem or not. I don't know how complicated that is, but you would think that a police report would reflect the type of vehicle involved in an accident. I don't know.
Again, I don't think it breaks it down to RVs, if I'm not mistaken.
What I'm saying is that maybe they could add it,
Oh,
it might be useful information. If we're trying to, look at this issue and the safety issue, which is, what my constituent was concerned about, is somebody who had bad vision driving an RV with no other requirement except a driver's license and no insurance.
so, with that said, one of the things that I didn't mention is when I was talking about who was going to run the education portion of it. If it's up to the state, then that means depending on how many schools we have that we locate, we would have to buy a Class A RV. We would have to buy a Class B RV. We'd have to purchase a regular trailer so that the person that operates a Class B that might have a trailer attached to it. So there's a lot of considerations there that DMV would have to take into account if it's being run out of our.
Why would you have to do that? When I go get a driver's license, I don't have to rely on DMV to give me a card to do my driver's test. Why would it be different for commercial for CDL? Just curious.
The only thing I can think of is that if I was to go to a Pete's RV and say, I want to use one of your trucks and your trailer to take my test and get my training, then I don't know if they would give me one. And that's so.
Yeah, I was just curious.
So you're saying if you're doing the CDL test, it's on a EMP owned vehicle or not, or?
Not that, I'm sorry,
The training school. Oh, you're talking about owning it to do the training,
the training school,
off the training.
Oh,
if we're offering the
Not to
training,
take the
yes,
test. Right.
correct.
Okay, but to offer training through the DMV, we would have to buy the vehicles to offer the training in, is that what you're?
Correct.
I misunderstood what you said.
Representative Casey and then
I
Representative.
just wanted to make a remark. Bad vision is dangerous in any vehicle, not just a big RV.
Yeah.
It's like any vehicle. I could be in a little Yugo. I could be very dangerous with it if I can't see. But I hate to comment on the bill, but the whole thing that came about was the guy couldn't see driving his RV. He shouldn't have been driving anything. That's all I want to say on that. I just, I hate to put out a bunch of people that want to go on vacation because one person didn't go get an eye exam and happened to be driving something that was very heavy. And unfortunately ran into somebody, which I feel bad for, but enough said.
Representative Burt, I'm sorry, Representative Keiser was up in the queue and then.
Yeah, sure.
I'm sorry.
I would agree that it would eliminate a lot of people, but then you've got these.
We're not discussing the bill back and forth and we're
Excuse me.
asking questions this way. We're not even taking up the bill for sure yet. What we are trying to find out is what information does the CDL, what is it available? What are the weights? What would the process look like to a certain degree? So it is a little bit of a touchy, and it's because the schedule was not the way that it is. So it wasn't prepared to take up the bill per se. It was an opportunity to learn a little more about what was up. So I take the apologies or responsibility, the fact that we're adjusting to what the schedule allowed. We haven't decided that we're taking up the bill, but we do want to make sure we understand what vision requirements are out there today and what other states do in CDLs and the spot. But if we have questions for the witness, we want to make sure we focus on using his expertise.
So if such a thing would come into place, my experience is that if you're going to get a CDL, you have to bring your own vehicle to do that. So the DMV does not supply a hazmat a commercial vehicle of the type that you're trying to get. You have to bring that yourself. And so that would be an issue. That could be an issue relative to trying to get they'd have to buy the thing before they would find out whether they could drive it. So, anyway, there's a point.
So would you like me to go through the process of, if this was to go through, what the process of getting your CDL would be?
Not yet. I will assume Representative Burke.
Can I just clarify something? It does relate to the bill, but I just want to clarify that the issue of the vision test can really be separated from the RV issue. You know, we could decide, forget RVs, you could look at whether we should require everybody to have a vision test over a certain age. That's all. It doesn't necessarily do related. It is related, but it's not, it doesn't necessarily have to be. Just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Commissioner.
If you don't mind me if I change course a little bit, and if there's more, please feel free, but I know there was a couple questions earlier, I just wanted to bring Pat over that kind of, and my apologies, we had a staff member get stuck in jury duty, so that's why it's scheduled today, and Pat was very last second, but since there were some questions earlier, I was just gonna flag it, and that came up about CDL medical testing
Mhm.
and the different avenues on that. And then, and Pat, I'm not sure if you have this, but the number of CDL approximately licenses we have active out in Vermont right now. And then just touch on the piece on the endorsements, if there's any different requirements for the medical. Reference medical testing, I guess, some of the endorsements we have on the CASMAT or the buses.
So, the medical, right now, Vermont as well as the federal requires the medical to be no more than 2 years. So the medical can only be 2 years or less. Depending on your medical history, maybe less than 2 years. So it could be a year, it could be 6 months, it could be 8 months. It all depends on the medical examiner's requirements or requirement, which he or she follows the federal requirements. They're trained by the feds to provide medicals.
A medical examiner could decide that somebody had to be re-examined every 6 months. Or
Yes, depending on,
what their physical condition is. So it's not automatically 2 years. It starts out maybe at 2 years, but you're depending on your exam, you might have to go back every 6 months.
for instance, if I'm a diabetic, I'm an insulin dependent diabetic. I may have to be required to go back every 3 months, every 6 months, every 8 months, or every year.
Who pays for that?
The driver does, or the company.
Or the company, but the driver, it's in effect, the person with the actual license, their company may or may not choose to pay for it, or they may pay, okay.
Correct. But again, the guidelines are set by the feds, so the medical examiner, I can't just go to my personal doctor and have the medical done. I have to go to a federally certified medical examiner.
So with commercial driver's license requirements are all federally mandated, and you administer and monitor on behalf of the state to be in compliance with all of the federal rules. So anything to do with the CDL is a federal, and you're the administrator and educator of that. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah,
Okay.
DMV administers or makes sure that that's being done. So if we're going to issue a CDL, we verify that the person has a valid medical. The medical provider, it's put into the federal database, and we're able to bring that up. And if, for instance, if a medical expires in between well, of course, if it's 2 years, my CDL is going to be good for 4 years. So at some time during that 4 years, I may have to be required to do my medical once or possibly twice, depending on when my medical expires. We notify the person, if they don't submit their new medical, we notify them, you need to submit your new medical. Otherwise, your license will get downgraded. We don't automatically downgrade it. We give them a warning, and then in time for them to bring it in. There are some, as far as special requirements for the endorsements, the only special requirement is with school buses, and it's smaller school buses are required to have a medical also. And that's also federally. So any school bus operator that we have that has a school bus endorsement is required to have a medical on file with us, a valid medical.
And that medical examiner could reduce to less than 6 months. If they have a situation with that medical and it's downgraded, that means it's removed from their license. They can get it back without retesting all of these, if the medical portion, or do they have to start back over at ground zero and retest it entirely?
Okay, so it depends on the time frame. If I don't do a medical and my license gets downgraded from a CDL to a regular driver's license, it will depend on the time frame of how long I waited. So for a school bus operator, it would be 6 months. They would have to be retested.
If they aren't able to take care of their medical issue within 6 months, they're gonna have to retest the entire.
They're gonna have to take the written and they're gonna have to take the driving test, yes. If it's a regular CDL, I believe right now it's a year. I'd have to go back into the book and check, but I'm pretty sure it's a year.
I appreciate you indulging. I have a constituently related issue that is, anyway.
And I will definitely find out about,
Is in this area.
I will find out about the other part, if it's a non-school bus, what the time frame is. I believe it's a year, but it might be 2 years. So
Did you happen to know that when the commissioner mentioned how many CDLs are out for Vermont CDL pocketing the ballpark of how many? I know you'll bring that back in your presentation. I was just curious.
yeah, I don't offhand. I can find that out also. And so, so I do know this talks about 70 years or older. When I checked, when I was doing the research, right now Vermont has over 87,000 licensed people that are 70 and above.
87,000 over 70 years old.
So you figure every 4 years they come in to get a new license. So that's over 20,000 coming into DMV to get an eye exam every year. More than what we're doing now. And that's so, and I should back up, anytime somebody comes in for their CDL renewal, they have an eye exam. Well, they get it at the medical anyway. The DOT,
Both.
no, the DOT physician does the medical or the eye exam. Yes.
Representative Powell?
If somebody was required to take the eye exam, they potentially could get a license. You know, they may be going already for an eye exam, every couple of years. So potentially that could help reduce the in-person testing at the DMV.
It could, if I read the bill correct, it says at DMV.
Yeah.
So,
Change.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you. Yeah.
yep. So that they would be required to come in. If this was the past, they would be
And
required
I
to.
know you have to comment on the exact language, but a lot of times short form bills are to try to drive a conversation around a concern and an issue. And then for us to find out what else there is or isn't, and what this information is. So when we learn what 87,000 people could be impacted, that's helps us understand the perspective and how much more we'd have to dig into it. So I appreciate that you have to be specific to that bill, but for us, the piece is that the short forms are designed to get around to get to a topic. They're designed to get to, it's a lot of ways. I mean, sorry, there's learning about a particular topic. I'm sorry, but
I was just gonna say, it's not actually a short form bill.
I'm sorry.
It's not actually a short form bill. I don't believe. But I think the point is well taken that whether it's short form or not, we don't have to go with the. We can change it.
But we are learning about a subject that's important, and I guess, and I appreciate that I said that wrong. Appreciate the clarification. Representative Keiser?
So if we're talking about a CDL, if hypothetically, then if this went forward, you would need a logbook and hours of service. And you'd have to document all this?
Yes. So yes, if you require a CDL, under the federal requirements, no. Under the state requirements, yes, because we adopt the federal requirements as our own state law. So the process to get your CDL, and then I'll go into the logbook on that. The process to get your CDL is first you have to get your permit. And then you can do the permit after you enter the entry-level driver training. The feds now require entry-level driver training, which requires classroom, or what they call theory, and behind the wheel, range as well as open road. Okay, so the school would have to offer the theory or classroom portion. There's no set hours, but there is requirements that you have to meet in your theory that you have to talk about. The person then has to show competency in theory. So they have to take a test. Depending on the schools, it might be you take a test at the end of each unit, or you take a final exam or whatever. That's all up to the school on how to develop that. Then they also require behind the wheel. You need your permit for behind the wheel. Again, there's no hours set. It's based on competency of the skills that you're being tested in. Okay. And then the open road. The instructor has to be, the school has to be a licensed federal school, or they have to be on the registry. And then all your instructors also have to be on the registry. If it's not an instructor on the registry, they can't sign off on your competency. It has to be somebody on the registry that signs off. They input that into this federal system. We can bring that up at our department that you've met the requirements of the ELDT. If you haven't met the requirements of the ELDT, you cannot be tested by us. You have to meet those requirements. And again, there's no timeframes. The reason there's no timeframes is if I take somebody off the street to teach them how to drive a tractor trailer, or even how to drive a straight truck, it might take me, 40 hours. Okay, used to require hours or we used to actually require a set number of hours for different schools. But it might take me 40 hours. I get a child or a 18-year-old that's been driving a farm truck on their family farm and on the roads for years, because they can by law. It might only take me a week, and the biggest process will be the theory portion because they already know how to operate. I may be able to take them out on the range and they have everything down, fine. And so it may only take them a week. So that's why the federal government said, we're not going to set hours because it depends on the circumstances. You also, once you have to do your medical and turn that in, you're then going to have to take usually take the written test before you get your permit, or you do take the written test before you get your permit. You're then going to have to take the practical test, or what we call the skills test. That's based on the federal guidance, set skills that are developed by AAMVA, the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators. You have to pass that. That includes a pre-trip inspection of the vehicle. If you pass that, then you get your CDL, and depending on the type of vehicle you show up, it will depend on the type of CDL you will get. So if I want to get my Class A CDL and I only show up in a Class B vehicle with a small trailer that's under that 10,001 pound threshold, I'm going to get a Class B because that's what I showed up in. Okay. If I show up in the larger unit, then I could get my Class A. Keep in mind that I cannot drive that vehicle to the location. I have to have somebody that is licensed for a similar vehicle right next to me in the passenger seat. When I'm out on the road, I have to have somebody right next to me while I'm driving that, doing my driver training, right next to me, sitting in that driver's seat. Now, right now, there are no schools that offer that in Vermont. As far as costs for the schools for the entry-level driver training, it's roughly $8,000 per person. So, and that doesn't guarantee they're going to get their CDL.
You're all set, then Representative Couch?
Yeah, I was gonna, just before you said Cox, I was gonna ask that question. And in my mind, I was thinking, like most employers who our town road crew, I don't know if they pay for it, but I think they help support it. I mean, what supports are out there? Are there government supports to help pay for this? Are you aware of any, I guess?
So for the average citizen, no, there are not. There are, I believe there are some grants out for some folks, vulnerable folks. But for the average citizen, no, they pay out of their pocket or the company pays for it. The thing about the companies and a lot of times, and we try to make sure the companies know this, is they can actually do the training themselves. There's nothing that requires that you have to take it out of school. So like a lot of my school bus companies do the training themselves because there's no school, right now, there's no CDL school license through us that does school bus training. So a lot of the school bus companies do the training themselves.
There was about 2 years ago, I don't know if it's still in effect, a CDL training in Newport. I don't know if it was CCV, but somebody offered it for a brief period of time. I don't know if it's still enacted now, but it was free too.
Yeah, I don't think they are licensed through us. So that's why it's free. If they were charging, they'd have to be licensed through us. Because then they become a commercial enterprise. And the way the law's written, it's commercial enterprise schools have to be, that's why a company doesn't have to be licensed through us. So like Bella Vance, even though Bella Vance actually, they opened up their own school and are licensed through us, they're not required to be because they train their own employees and that. But like Northern Trucks or Northern Driver Training has to be licensed through us because they charge. So, but yes, CCV I did, and I'm not sure if they still are. There is one of the tech centers in the Rutland area that does offer the training also. But I think they charge. So, yes, they are licensed through us. So, yes, because I think they also do it in combination with Casella.
Representative Burke?
Yeah, so if they do the training, do the instructors have to have a separate be on the registry, or how does that work?
The instructors have to be on the federal registry to do
So
the
their
training.
instructors like Bell Vance or whatever, they would have their instructors on the federal registry. They could do the training and the testing.
They can't do the testing.
The testing.
They can do the training, and they are like Bella Vance's instructors because they have a school and they've chose to be licensed. Their instructors are also licensed through us. So Northern Driver, they're a commercial enterprise. So the school is licensed through us. Their instructors are licensed through DMV also. And then they also have to be on the federal registry, both the school and the instructors. If the instructors are not on the federal registry, they cannot sign off on competency for either theory or behind the wheel.
The requirement for passing the test, certifying the test at the federal registry.
So, and in order to do the test, they have to come into DMV right now. And then the other thing is, again, if you're looking at, if you were to say, one of our licensed schools are required or would do it, they have to then purchase the equipment to do it. And I don't know if you've looked at the prices of motor or RVs, but I priced out the low end CDL, what it would cost for a Class A, and it was, I don't have it with me, but I want to say it was about $300,000 because you have to buy the truck to go with it. And I want to say the Type B, the straight one, was right around 100 some thousand.
We could take our field trips in that.
So again, if you're looking at DMV doing it, and we're going to do it at multiple sites, like we do with the motorcycle program, that's a good amount of money that we're putting into it. So if we were to,
Patrick, I really appreciate you coming over so quickly. Thank you, Commissioner, for arranging it. I'm looking forward to your presentation of all the areas of your enforcement and education. And we appreciate you coming in for the committee for this morning.
Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Please, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me.
Good luck with your new